Directors of ceremonies, our hosts, the Mayor of eThekwini, Councillor Kaba, Speaker of the KZN Legislature, Honorable Boyce, the Speaker of the National Assembly in South Africa, Honorable Togo Didiza, SADC Parliamentary Forum President, Honorable Randrianan Soloniakos Seteni-Thierry, Speaker of Madagascar, Speaker and members of Parliament from SADC member states, representatives of SADC Secretariat, Pan-African Parliament, African Union Commission, climate change experts and development partners from UNFP, UNDP, AU, IPU, private sector and civil society here present, ladies and gentlemen. I would have liked to be with you in Durban this morning, but owing to some other pressing government commitments, I was unable to be there. It is my honor to welcome you all to the 58th Plenary Assembly of the SADC Parliamentary Forum. We are convened with the crucial focus on the impact of climate change on women and youth in the SADC region and the role of parliaments in climate change mitigation and adaptation. This theme emphasizes the necessity of collective action by parliaments to address and develop sustainable solutions for this pressing challenge. South Africa G20 declaration. Before delving into the subject, let me pause and acknowledge that this plenary takes place following the successful hosting of the G20 summit, the first ever hosted on African soil. What is more important is that the summit resulted in several key outcomes focused on placing the priorities of the continent and the Global South at the forefront of global agenda. A significant achievement was the adoption of the G20 declaration centered on the themes of solidarity, equality, sustainability as key pillars of inclusive growth. The declaration emphasizes the African philosophy of Ubuntu, I am because we are, which stresses global interconnectedness and a commitment to ensuring no one is left behind. The key areas of commitment and action included leaders condemning all attacks against civilians and reaffirming their commitment to work for a just, comprehensive, and lasting peace in conflict areas. Recognizing that high debt levels hinder inclusive growth, especially in low-income countries in Africa, the G20 committed to strengthening the implementation of the common framework for debt treatments in a timely and coordinated manner. They also called for enhanced debt transparency from all stakeholders. The G20 supports finalizing the quota increase under the 6th General Review of Quotas to ensure a strong and adequately resourced International Monetary Fund. Notably, they welcomed the creation of a 25th chair at the IMF Executive Board to enhance the voice and representation of sub-Saharan Africa. On energy transitions, the G20 Leaders Summit recognized that over 600 million Africans lack access to electricity. Therefore, they supported global efforts to triple renewable energy capacity and double the global average annual rate of energy efficiency improvements by 2030. They welcomed the Mission 300 platform to connect 300 million people to electricity in Africa by 2030, and the new action plan to accelerate the deployment of clean cooking solutions. The G20 supported the G20 Critical Minerals Framework, which is a guide to ensure that the supply of important minerals is sustainable and stable, while also encouraging local processing and value addition in the countries where these minerals are produced. The leaders welcomed the high-level principles on sustainable industrial policy for inclusive economic growth, industrialization, jobs, and equality. They also established the Nelson Mandela target, aiming to further reduce the rate of young people not in employment, education, or training by 5% by 2030, and also committed to advancing universal social protection systems. They reiterated their commitment to resilient food systems and welcomed the Ubuntu approaches on food security and nutrition, which aim to address the negative impacts of excessive food price volatility. Equally, the leaders recognize the potential of artificial intelligence and welcome the launch of the AI for Africa initiative, a voluntary platform for multilateral cooperation to promote access to computing power, talent, and infrastructure in African countries. The subject was also extensively discussed at the 57th Plenary Assembly held in Victoria Falls City in the Republic of Zimbabwe under the theme, Harnessing Artificial Intelligence for Effective and Efficient Parliamentary Processes in the SADC region, Experiences, Challenges, and Opportunities. The key outcomes in this regard included a call to share experiences and best practices, the recognition of challenges like data security and over-reliance on foreign AI, and the identification of opportunities to improve efficiency and transparency through AI tools. Moreover, the G20 commended the South African Presidency for launching the second phase of the G20 Compact with Africa 2025 to 2030. The leaders welcomed the African Union as a full member of the G20 and called for a transformative reform of the UN Security Council to make it more representative and inclusive, specifically improving the representation of Africa, Asia Pacific, and Latin America and the Caribbean. Ladies and gentlemen, climate change was also a central topic of the G20 summit. The topic was integrated into several working groups and culminated in specific commitments in the leaders' declaration. The leaders acknowledged the increasing frequency and intensity of disasters and welcomed the G20 voluntary high-level principles for investing in disaster risk reduction. They also reiterated the urgent need for universal coverage of early warning systems, particularly in Africa by 2027. They reaffirmed their commitment to the Paris Agreement goal of limiting global average temperature increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius and stressed the importance of national just transition pathways to achieve climate action alongside poverty eradication. It is commendable that SADC is addressing climate change through policy development, capacity building, and specific initiatives like the development of a regional climate resilient water investment program. Key actions include creating climate change strategy and action plan, mainstreaming climate change into other policies, enhancing climate information services, and focusing on water resources management to build regional resilience. However, significant challenges remain, and the region is still highly vulnerable to climate impacts. Climate change disproportionately affects women and young people, increasing their work burdens, escalating health risks, and heightening the changes of gender-based violence and exploitation. It poses a significant threat multiplier, exacerbating existing socio-economic vulnerabilities. In parallel, climate change impacts such as persistent droughts, extreme weather events, including floods and cyclones, land degradation, and shifting rainfall patterns profoundly undermine sustainable development in SADC, particularly affecting women and youth. It is imperative to acknowledge that women are disproportionately affected due to their central roles in household welfare and their dependence on climate-sensitive natural resources. As primary providers of food, water, and fuel, climate-induced scarcity compels women to undertake extended journeys, thereby increasing their workload, exposure to risks, and adverse health consequences. Women are highly reliant on rain-fed agriculture. Fluctuating crop yields, the loss of livelihood, exacerbate food insecurity and poverty within female-headed households. Furthermore, women often lack economic, political, and legal power, including land rights, which restrict their resilience and capacity for adaptation. During periods of crisis, they have limited access to relief and decision-making processes. Additionally, youth and adolescent girls, along with young people in general, are frequently associated with disrupted education and heightened vulnerability. Consequently, climate-related hazards such as floods and droughts can cause damage to schools' infrastructure or compel households to withdraw children, particularly girls, from schools to support subsistence and income-generating activities. This situation exacerbates the vulnerability of girls, leading to a significant rise in school dropouts among adolescent girls. This phenomenon often contributes to unequal gender roles, increasing their risk of child, early, and forced marriages as a coping mechanism for impoverished families. Furthermore, it exposes them to physical and sexual abuse. Therefore, the combination of limited opportunities and climate shocks can restrict livelihood prospects for young people, particularly in rural areas. Consequently, they may resort to increased internal or regional migration to urban slums in pursuit of survival. In response to climate change mitigation and adaptation, the SADC parliaments hold a vital mandate and play a multifaceted role in promoting effective and equitable climate action. This is accomplished through their functions related to legislation, oversight, and representation. Immediately, we must enact and strengthen our policies to align with regional agreements such as the SADC Protocol on Gender and Development, SADC Climate Change Strategy, and international climate agreements such as the Paris Agreements and the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. We must also promote gender-sensitive policies by introducing legislation that ensures a just and equitable approach and mandates the mainstreaming of gender consideration in all climate policies. We must facilitate the transition to clean energy by enacting laws and creating enabling policy environments that incentivize renewable energy investments, improve access to clean energy, and leverage critical minerals for sustainable supply chains. As we implement these transformative reforms, we must strengthen oversight and accountability. This work will entail parliaments holding governments accountable for their performance in implementing domestic climate laws, regional commitments, and international obligations. To effectively address climate change, it is imperative that we allocate sufficient resources to climate change mitigation and adaptation. Programs, particularly those that focus on vulnerable groups. The success of this initiative hinges on investments in robust monitoring and evaluation capacities, particularly in monitoring the impacts of climate-related programs. It is crucial to ensure these programs are inclusive, effective, and aligned with their intended objectives, particularly in reducing vulnerabilities and promoting gender equity. This multifaceted approach requires not only comprehensive whole-of-government strategies, but also the active engagement of civil society and the private sector as partners with government. By bridging this gap, we can ensure that parliaments serve as crucial intermediaries between constituents and the government, facilitating the inclusion of the voices, concerns, and local knowledge of affected communities, particularly women and youth, in national policy debates and decision-making processes. It is essential to invest in public dialogues and awareness initiatives by providing platforms for public hearings and discussions on climate change-related issues. This will raise national awareness and enable the solicitation of public perspectives to ensure that policies are people-centric and inclusive. In the subsequent iteration of the SADC regional and international engagement, it is crucial to revive detailed reports on the progress made in member countries, particularly in the realm of parliamentary activities. Additionally, it is imperative to assess the level of accountability and delivery of this program. Ladies and gentlemen, let me conclude by reiterating that parliaments play a crucial role in shaping policies and implementing measures to mitigate and adapt to climate change. We have the power to enact legislation that promotes sustainable practices, invest in renewable energy sources, and support communities most affected by environmental changes. In South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa signed the Climate Change Bill into law in 2024, which outlines a national climate change response, including mitigation and adaptation measures, as well as South Africa's fair contribution to the global climate change response. The law also sets out to enhance South Africa's ability and capacity over time to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and build climate resilience while reducing the risk of job losses and promoting opportunities emerging in the green economy. South Africa's Parliament has also made a clear commitment to clean governance and fight corruption as core principles. It is imperative that we work together to ensure that our laws and policies reflect the urgent need to address our challenges, including climate change and its disproportionate impact on women and youth. As leaders in our communities, let us commit ourselves to meaningful and impactful action to address the impact of climate change on women and youth in the SADC region. Together, we can make a difference and ensure that our region thrives in the face of environmental challenges. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you.